What's the best way to take Trenbolone in the off season? I'm going to tell you. Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your forum for whatever you have on your mind, be it bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, anything for bodybuilding competition related. We are now less than 6 weeks from the Olympia. We're going to go right into the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question: I'm taking 125 grams of carbs every day and I'm losing 2 pounds a week. I'm in very good condition. I have 2 months left until I compete. My question is, should I lower my carb intake each week or do a rotational diet? Or should I wait until I stop losing weight before changing my diet?
If you're losing weight, ostensibly body fat, consistently, then don't change anything. I always tell people the most food you could possibly eat and still lose body fat is the ultimate diet. There's no, like, everyone says, what's the best diet? The best diet is the diet you can follow where you're eating the most amount of food and still losing body fat. Obviously, you want to make sure you get enough protein. Obviously, you want to make sure you get enough essential fats and stuff like that. But once you have that aspect taken care of, anything else you can eat, if you can eat 500 grams of carbs a day and lose weight and get in shape, you're a lucky man. Most people can't do that. So there's no reason to reduce food or calories, or anything, or add more cardio if you're succeeding in achieving what you need to do, which is 2 to 3 pounds of weight loss per week. Now, obviously, if you're 50 or 60 pounds out of shape, you might need to speed that up a little bit if you didn't give yourself enough weeks, if you're not going to make it. But my point is, if you're dropping consistently, don't change anything.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Would you consider outdoor walking at a brisk pace if you have enough hills to be adequate for low intensity, steady state cardio per your cardio recommendations?
Here's the problem. People go and walk outside and they stop and they look at trees, and then if they're walking, in a city, they have to stop at traffic lights. If it's not continuous walking and you're going to be, distracted from continuous walking, then no, that doesn't count as cardio. But if you could actually go outside and walk at a brisk pace and can do it continuously without stopping, then that's fine. So a casual walking the dog sometimes is not adequate. People say, well, I walk the dog, 3 times a day, and I walk like 2 miles. Well, yeah, but you stop. The dog goes to the bathroom. You check your phone. Oh, I think I pulled on the wire. You hit your phone. You check your phone, and so that's not adequate. That's not adequate. Sorry, but these questions, Sid, are from the Dave Palumbo Experience app, and I want to just make a note that a lot of people have been signing up lately, and I want to thank everyone. It's an app you download from the iTunes store or the Android store. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get all my writings, all my videos in an organized way. I answer everyone's everyone's questions in an open forum. So you get to see everyone's questions, everyone's answers. I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members every single week. So it's like an extra Ask Dave. It's a great learning experience. All my diets are in there. All my drug protocols are in there. Off-season, pre-contest, keto diets. Anything you could possibly want from me is in there. And it's always being updated with new content weekly. So it's a great app. It's a great gift to buy for someone. And once again, thanks for all the support all these years.
Let's go to the rest of our questions. Our questions from our social media outlets, from our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and most importantly, really where we've been taking most of our questions over the course of the last few weeks, really, is our YouTube community page. Great resource for getting in touch with us and a great platform for us to engage with our audience, especially for this show. So again, if you haven't already done so, go check us out on our YouTube page in the post section. We're going to start posting a lot of the content that we generally post on our social media platforms there as well, especially leading into the Olympia. Just another avenue for you to interact with us and interact with our bodybuilding hungry audience.
Two quick plugs I want to make also, Sid. Number one, I want to thank Scott over at Old School Bodybuilding Clothing. I know a lot of people think I own the company. I don't own the company. Scott, my good friend Scott does. And he sent us these Olympia shirts. I know you put them on the, they're like, it's hard to tell here, but
yeah, I was gonna say move away from the microphone. That's
they really have cool. a silver and gold foil on them. They're very high end shirts. They cost a lot more money, but they're really, really nice. And on the back, it has a whole thing about the Olympia coming up. And he sent those over to us for us to wear. Thank you so much. You know, we're just friends with Scott, and I love the guy. I love his wife. So thank you for that. The other thing is Gym Nation on Instagram made an awesome, I don't know if you've seen it, documentary about Dallas McCarver. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. But so just for those who haven't checked it out, and while Dave gives a little bit more of a further explanation, I'll pull it up on the screen. Gym Nation.
Okay, pull it up. Yes.
Yeah, this
Gym
they
Nation
do
HD. Yeah.
Yeah, so they do, I guess, quote unquote documentaries. They're not documentaries in the sense where it's like a real full scale it's more of a, their historic telling of the individual characters.
Yeah, they pull footage that from this that on YouTube already.
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick.
It's so good. It's so, first of all, the guy from from Gym Nation contacted me and said, Dave, I'd really like you to see it. I spent a really long time on it. And you know what? I can tell he spent a long time on it because when I watched it, it must have taken 1,000 hours to pull all that footage that he pulled, to put it all together in a coherent way, to tell the story that he told. He did, hats off to you. I mean, that could have gone on Netflix, that thing. It was so good. And, it was actually kind of sad in a sense that I watched it and I got very depressed because I realized that we really lost Dallas. He was 26 years old. I mean, it was a shame that this guy died. But the thing was very well done, I thought. And if you want to give the guy a couple hits, watch it. It's worth it. It's like about 35 minutes. And I watched it this morning and I couldn't stop. I was like mesmerized by it. It was very, very well done. So, good job.
We'll put the link to that documentary in the article description below. Okay. I mean, it's crazy to think we just posted about this on our Instagram. Was it 7 years ago, I think, between him and Rich Piana. We lost them both in a span of, I want to say 3 days or something like that. I think if my timeline is correct, Rich Piana had gone into the hospital beforehand. And then I still remember, getting, I'm not going to say exactly from who, but we got a phone call about 7 a.m. And he's telling us that Dallas died. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like we had just had Dallas McCarver on, Dave. I don't know if you remember. This is literally 3-4 days before his passing. We had him and Aaron Singerman on together for episode of Live With or whatever. And just it all happened so suddenly. But again,
they quoted a lot of They had us in there a lot as far as quoting. Me saying a lot of stuff about Dallas from just different interviews and different stuff. So it's funny. It was so long ago because it feels like it was yesterday. It was so long ago. Nick Trigili still had hair in the documentary, which he hasn't had hair for a long time, as far as I know. So it was well done. It was worth watching it. It scares the crap out of you because after you watch it you think you have 100 things wrong with you. You're checking. I'm like running. I have a blood pressure cuff on one hand. I'm checking my blood sugar on the other hand. It's scary to know that a 26-year-old kid like that could have died, and it could have been any one of us. I mean, really, if you think about it, it was. I know he was pushing the envelope, but it wasn't like he wasn't doing that much more probably than everyone else does in this bodybuilding industry. So it was a reminder that we're all mortal and that you never know when your day is going to come, and live life to its fullest. I know he did, but we lost him way too early.
7 years and never to be forgotten, Dallas McCarver and Rich Piana. As we proceed to the rest of the questions, again, the rest of our questions from our social media platforms. I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but again, people have questions, curiosities. What is more powerful, IGF-1 or HGH? I heard IGF-1 is stronger, but it seems like most people don't use it. Why would that be?
You know, on paper, theoretically, IGF-1 is more powerful because, right, growth hormone induces IGF-1 release from the liver. So you would think that, if you take IGF-1 itself, you should grow better, but you don't for some reason. And I don't know if it's the quality of what's out there or something else, but I will say this, that I've seen better results from taking growth hormone. And like I said, it doesn't make sense theoretically, but practically that's what I'm noticing. So if I had to choose one or the other, I would probably choose GH. If you can do both, then you can incorporate both. But I feel that the growth hormone effects are better. Now, there is a possibility. We haven't, no one's really realized that there is a possibility that growth hormone potentially could have a direct effect that we are unaware of. Right? Maybe there are growth hormone receptors that we just haven't located yet on muscle. And so in addition to IGF-1 stimulating muscle growth, maybe growth hormone directly stimulates muscle growth or through some other cascade that we're unaware of. All I know is that when you take growth hormone, it seems to work better than IGF alone. Now, I had a very good experience with IGF when I first used it, but I was getting it directly from a source that was making it. I don't know what I have to assume what's on the market is good. I think a lot of people are not getting the results they want because they use too much. And I've talked about this before about shutting down receptor numbers because you use too much of it. But the fact remains that growth hormone seems to work better than IGF-1, and that's just the way it is.
We got this question not too long ago, but I think it was a little bit more about for diet sodas. Gatorade Zero, is it okay to drink while dieting?
Yeah, theoretically, we're back to theoretically. Theoretically, yeah, it's got zero everything in it. So, I mean, it should be fine. I don't know if I would be drinking 25 of them a day, but if you're drinking, 2 or 3 of them a day, probably not a big deal. Sometimes people have like an adverse reaction to too much of the artificial sweetener. Never really did that to me, but I do know some people that get a little bloated from it. Sometimes it upsets their GI tract. I don't know if it's the artificial sweetener or if it's the preservative. They usually use a lot of citric acids or acidic compounds to kill bacteria in a lot of these drinks. And sometimes too much of that can irritate a person's stomach. So people then assume it's the artificial sweetener, but it could just be that. So my suggestion is everything in moderation. If you want to drink one while you're training, or you want to drink one, at night when you rather than cheating, that's fine. I always used to drink diet soda. and I didn't drink Diet Coke a lot. Although I once in a while I'll have one now just to wake myself up a little bit. But I would drink a lot of like diet ginger ale, and that was like my go-to, like to get me through the tough times when I was really hungry. And I never had any problems with it. So, but some people do have problems. You got to kind of experiment with it and see how your body responds.
Training related question. How would you go about structuring a training split for someone whose lower body is a bit ahead of their upper body?
I remember Maz Ali told me, and I think it was 92, after the 92 suburban championships in Jersey, he said, you know what? Don't even train your legs. He's like, your legs are so good. He goes, just train your upper body and bring it up to match your legs. And in 94, I came back and did the suburban. And of course, I continued to train my legs. I just worked real hard to bring my upper body up. And obviously I did it worked. I always think that not training a body part is not the right way to go. I think you got to just figure out a way to figure out why the body parts that are not big enough are not big enough. And usually it has to do with training technique. I have had guys tell me, yeah, my chest won't grow, my shoulders won't grow. And then I have them send me training video, and I see that they're doing, bench presses and they're stopping like almost 6 inches off their chest, and they're doing limited range of motion. So you're not even engaging the pec muscle. Same thing with shoulders. I see them coming like they're doing this. They're not even coming all the way down with the dumbbells. So they're doing partial reps, and you don't grow from doing partial reps. So A lot of times you got to lighten the weight up, learn proper technique, full range of motion, control the negative. So a lot of times when you have a body part that's lacking, and in this person's case, obviously it's their whole upper body, it's probably because they're just not, training properly. And a lot of times it's like, you think, well, I got to grow, so I got to lift heavier weight. And then you sacrifice form for weight, or you start copying like Branch Warren or Ronnie Coleman's form, which is really terrible form. But for them, it works because they feel the muscle working. You guys, if anyone else were to do that, they're either going to get injured or they're going to get no results from it. So don't copy other people. Copy the people who have impeccable form, because impeccable form always yields very good results.
Species related question. And again, we open this show up for whether you have diet training or if you have questions about species nutrition. Why do you put soy in your supplements? And in his question, isn't that an indicator of a poorer quality product?
Yeah, there's no significant soy. They use soy lecithin in all protein, and actually now I think that they've switched it to like a sunflower lecithin, but it's just an emulsifying agent, and so it makes it so the product doesn't stick together. There's like nothing in it. It's trace amounts. No one's putting soy into whey isolate to compensate or to have any significant macro effect on the amount of protein in there. They're doing it so that the protein, is powderized properly. And I think we've switched. I think most companies, including us, have switched from soy lecithin to some sort of a sunflower lecithin now. Yeah, that's why you'll see soy. And look, there's a lot of shyster companies out there, but no one is putting soy into their whey to pad it. That's for sure. But you have to list this stuff on the label because some people have soy allergies, or in the case of any kind of milk allergies. That's why I'm always horrified when I see products say lactose free and the first ingredient is like milk. Just because you put lactase in, and it doesn't guarantee that all the lactose, is being digested by that lactase enzyme. So it's really, you're doing a real disservice to people, especially because people are very sensitive to lactose, like myself. Same thing with you have to list what's on the label, and you really shouldn't say, in other words, if someone had a peanut allergy and we're producing product in a facility that has peanuts, you have to kind of put that also on the label, because some people have such bad peanut allergies that they go into anaphylactic shock and they die. And so that's why it's important that you list every single ingredient and you put these allergens on the label if you're using these products, because even though they might be trace amounts, you have to list it. And that's, I hope it's a long, convoluted answer to what your question was, but I hope it explains it better.
Another HGH related question. Can HGH spike prolactin levels?
Theoretically, I guess it can. Sometimes when you stimulate, GH in that area, that's where prolactin is produced. I haven't seen it. I don't, I look at a lot of blood work. I haven't seen people with high prolactin levels from GH usage. It's usually from Deca or Trenbolone. But I guess it's possible, but it's unlikely.
Question about Olympia class winners, or rather open class winners. Now, I had to Google this just to make sure that Samson Data was not in this category, but why do you think there are no open class winners over 6 feet tall aside from Arnold? And do you think we'll see another one? Is open bodybuilding a shorter man's game? Now, I had to Google it myself. Now, Google says that Samson Data is 5'11". I'm 5'9.5". He's definitely a head taller, so he'd probably be as close. Now, again, if you want to look ahead and maybe say speculation-wise, someone like a Quinton Aria could profile as a Mr. Olympia candidate. But in your opinion, is that point valid? Has open class bodybuilding become more of a shorter man's game?
No, I think it's just easier, to have a more complete physique when you're shorter, because there's less to fill out, so to speak. I think that the taller men look better, however, usually. Arnold always said a good tall man always beats a good short man. But you gotta have a good tall man to do the work, right? I mean, Cedric was great. He was over 6 feet. Tony Freeman was over 6 feet. I would say Sampson's over 6 feet. I don't believe he's 5'11". I stood next to him. He's pretty tall. Dallas McCarver was over 6 feet. What's his name? Quinton is over 6 feet. Andrew Jack is over 6 feet. So there's a lot of good, over 6 foot guys. It seems to me though that the 5'11" to 5'10" range is usually the sweet spot. That's where you get the Ronnie Colemans, the Dorians, the Haneys. Those guys are in that range. And Jay, those are the most dominant, Mr. Olympias. So that must be the sweet spot. It's like tall enough to still be tall and beat the shorter guys, but it's not too tall where you have trouble filling out your frame. And that's historically been what's happened in bodybuilding.
Well, you just mentioned his name in the question. Next question is about him, and that is 4-time Olympia champion, Mr. Olympia, Jay Cutler. How the heck does Jay Cutler still have all of his hair?
I don't know. I don't know what his secrets are. But you know what? A lot of Chris Aceto has his hair. Some people are just resistant to hair loss, and Jay got good hair genes, and unless he's sneaking off the turkey without telling anyone and getting some extra hair moved around his head, I have to just believe he has good hair genes. Dorian has all his hair too. I mean, so it's it just is what it is. I think Ronnie has his hair. Remember when Ronnie grew his hair back for a little while? I think he just likes a shaved head, but I think Ronnie has hair as well. And so some people just are resistant to hair loss, and just like some guys never get acne. I don't know why they don't get acne. It's just they just don't do it. They don't get it. Whereas other people, they look at a shot of testosterone and they start breaking out. So genetics dictates everything in this world, and we all are only as great as our greatest genetic weakness, And so thank your parents if you lost your hair. I have.
Question about Tren in an off-season scenario. In an off-season setting, when you take Tren Acetate, do you take that with test alone, or can you throw that on top of your 2-compound cycle, i.e. test Tren EQ?
Off-season, and I've probably answered this question 100 times, but I like to do 2 compounds because I like to switch every 6 weeks. So I might do Tren and test for 6 weeks. Then I'll do test and EQ for 6 weeks. I'll do test in DECA for 2 weeks. I might even do test in Masteron for 2 weeks. Sometimes if I feel up to it when I was competing. I don't, with all my competitors. That's how I run the cycles. I don't do 3 compounds, 4 compounds at one time because I don't see any added benefit. I see more of a benefit by switching compounds every 6 to 8 weeks because just as the body's getting used to one anabolic, we switch it to another one. And it's because each anabolic seems to bind to the androgen receptor in just a slightly different way. And that, for some reason, confuses the androgen receptors and sometimes prevents downregulation. Or at least it seems to re-energize the androgen receptor in a way, and it works better. I don't think anyone really knows why, but I'm making theoretical guesses here. But because it binds to the androgen receptor differently, maybe it doesn't cause as much downregulation because you're switching compounds every so many weeks. If you start stacking 3 and 4 drugs at a time off season, there's nothing to switch to. It's like you got to just stay on the same drugs the whole time, and I just don't think it works as well. Plus, I think when you take less drugs, in terms of less toxic load on your body, you tend to have a better appetite. Your appetite opens up. That's why I try to keep guys on long-acting injectables that have the least amount of toxicity. Stay away from the orals in the off-season so that you can eat. If you can't eat, you can't grow. And that's the bottom line. So keep the toxicity low. Pre-contest, you can stack all the drugs you want. It doesn't even matter if you're a little toxic. I mean, not that we want to be toxic, but if your appetite sucks in pre-contest, that's probably better because you're starving anyway. So that's not an issue. And plus, in the pre-contest stage, we're not looking to put size on. We're looking to maintain size. So different strategies off season, keep the appetite open, long-acting injectables, switch compounds every 6 to 8 weeks.
So we talked about notable bodybuilding personalities that we've lost over the course of the last decade. And one of those we actually lost a short while before Olympia weekend last year, but we heard of his passing on Olympia weekend, and that is Big Lenny. The question is, your favorite memories of meeting the Delray misfits, and in particular, Big Lenny, your favorite Big Lenny moments.
I don't even remember. I remember that one of the last times I met Lenny or saw Lenny or hung out with him at least was at, I believe it was the Orlando Olympia. Mr. G showed up and Big Lenny was there. And, we had been billing a fight between the two of those guys, like, for charity or something like that. I think that's what Mr. G was trying to bill it as for like 2 years, like before that. And it never happened. So we were goofing around and we kind of did like a fake, fight type video or like them squaring off against each other. And, and Lenny, I could tell was hurting at that point. He definitely was in some sort of heart failure at that point, but he still had a great personality, great sense of humor about it. He was fun. I tend to say I tend to be attracted to people who have interesting personalities, and we'll describe Lenny as an interesting personality rather than say anything more. If Lenny probably lived around the corner from me or lived in Cape Coral, I probably would hang out with him all the time just because I found him funny. He was a good guy. He had some weird opinions and had some strange, odd, fetishes, but at the end of the day, he was actually a pretty normal guy in the sense that, he had some interesting conversation and his observations about the world were very, very astute. Even though he would say things that were politically incorrect, he really observed the world and had some interesting, and very accurate assessments. So, like I said, I wish he lived closer because I probably would have been friends with him. Maybe I could have influenced him in a positive direction away from, all the destructive things that he did to himself, because he really didn't need to do all that. And there was no need for him to have died the way he did. That was just neglect on his part. And sometimes I always question why some people, die early and some people, live forever. And I think when you no longer have it like a will to live, like, and you're not doing anything that you're really passionate about, and you're kind of philandering, I think you find a way to exit this world. I really do. I really believe that. Now there are also people that probably cause their own demise because of bad habits, whether it be drug use or, or something else. But I think like in Lenny's situation, he really didn't have any goals anymore. And he was kind of just wandering, roaming the earth at this point. And I think it was time for him to move on. And that's why he left us. But he picked a good weekend to do it on Olympia weekend. And we'll always remember him every year come Olympia time because of that.
A couple of quick hitters. Keto diets. What is the science behind a cheat meal when on a keto diet?
Yeah, ketogenic diets, obviously, because they're very, very low carb, and your body is using fats as a fuel source. Insulin levels are really low, which is good, right? Because insulin is a fat storage hormone. So the lower the insulin in your body, the higher the growth hormone levels will be naturally in your body, and the more of a conducive environment it is to burning fat. The body burns fat optimally in a low insulin, high growth hormone environment, which is what you're inducing with a ketogenic diet by eating low carbs. However, thyroid hormone that's produced from the thyroid gland, the gland cranks out something called thyroxine, which is T4. And thyroxine in the circulation converts to T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. That rate of T4 to T3 conversion, which is very important, right? Because if you don't get T3 production, your metabolism drops because T3 is active thyroid hormone. That conversion is very dependent on insulin levels. So if insulin is low, you're not going to convert as much T4 to T3, which makes sense, right? Because if you're not eating a lot of food, your body wants to conserve fuel, so it's going to lower active thyroid output. However, if you give the body a cheat meal once a week, a higher carb meal, it tricks the body. So now the body says, because what happens is you get a huge spike of insulin, right, from the cheat meal. And the body says, we're fine. And it starts converting T4 to T3 again. So it never really gets stagnated. But if you ever talk to someone who's been on a ketogenic diet continuously for 6-8 weeks, even someone who's been on a low carb diet, I know guys that low carb diet never have a cheat meal. And the diet, it's almost like the diet stops working. Well, why does it stop working? Because T4 to T3 conversion has basically slowed down so much that your T3 levels are low. Now, if you're taking Cytomel or T3 exogenously, it doesn't really apply. But it is always good to spike insulin once a week, especially if you have enough time to get ready for a show, and you can do that. Now, you don't need to eat 1,000 grams of carbs. You only need to eat, like 40, 50 grams of carbs will do the trick. depending on who the person is, that will dictate how much food you eat at the cheat meal. But the point is that it's nice to spike that insulin level once a week to make sure the T4 to T3 conversion is optimal.
Take one last one, fiberlyze related. The best time of the day to take fiberlyze?
Any time of the day it works. I usually use it around 2 p.m. and before bed. That's just me by convention. Sometimes I don't remember. Sometimes I do it 4 p.m. and before bed, which I go to bed by, usually I do the last dose around midnight. It doesn't really matter. I know people that use it first thing in the morning and then they use it, before bed. Some people eat it as a snack. They put water in it and they let it gel and they put it in the refrigerator and they eat it. It becomes like Jell-O almost. You could put it in the freezer and eat it like ices, because it tastes like Italian ices. The flavoring system we use in there is really good. It's probably the best flavoring system of any fiber supplement on the market. But because we use the highest quality psyllium, the highest swell rate psyllium, which is the most expensive, by far the most, it's super expensive. And it has nothing to do with, a lot of people think, oh, everyone uses 95% psyllium. Yeah, everyone uses 95% psyllium, but of the 95% psyllium, there's a high swell rate, medium swell rate, and low swell rate. Most people use the low swell rate, or maybe if they're not trying to cheap out, they'll use the medium swell rate, which has nothing. It's not even close to the high swell rate psyllium. The high swell rate psyllium much more expensive, but works much better. That's why when it goes into water and it absorbs it, it instantly turns to Jell-O. That's why if you're not gonna eat it like Jell-O, mix it and gulp it down, which is what most people do. But like I said, it has a nice flavoring system to it. So it doesn't really matter when you take it. Like I said, if you're going to eat it like Jell-O, you might want to switch. You might want to chase it down with a glass of water after, just to make sure that you flush it down into your system. And everyone has their own times they take it. Sometimes when I'm on the road and I forget, people always say, should you take your vitamins around fiberlyze time? I try to separate it by an hour. But look, there's been times I got back to my hotel room. I'm traveling like in Pittsburgh. I down my vitamins because I just ate a meal. And then I do a fiber shake right after that and I go to sleep. So everything's going to get absorbed no matter what. It's just, if you have the ability to space out things, it works better that way.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything that we have coming up over the course of the next few weeks, less than 6 weeks heading into the Olympia. Right now on the channel, all new episode of the After Hours podcast and Heavy Muscle Radio with Dave Palumbo and Chris Aceto. Probably tomorrow's going to be Thursday. We have an exclusive interview. Well, it's not really exclusive, but an interview with Mr. Olympia Samson Dauda and Quinton Aria. Quinton flying to England to stay with Samson, train with him, eat with him, stay with him in preparation for the Italy Pro. That's going to be this weekend. So an insight into that partnership, how it came about, and really all the intricacies and what Quinton learned staying with Mr. Olympia. That's going to hit the channel tomorrow. RX Muscle. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.